All right, here we are starting on lesson number 11. And before we dive in and do any programming, I want to go through your activity guide so you can plan things out and make sure you've got all the criteria. All right, so please put your name up here and then go ahead and put in whatever class period you are in, and let's see what we've got. All right, this should be a scene where you've got certain sprites in there, background, some text. And I always say, try to think of some super corny joke, a riddle, something like that, where you're going to have two lines. In Schoology, you will see that I uploaded a document that has a whole bunch of corny jokes in there. You can certainly use that or choose one of your own if you happen to have an uncle or a grandpa that always tells those. My dad was certainly the king of that. So here's what we've got. You're going to use shapes, sprites, and text and create a scene. You could think of it like a page in a story or just the setting for a silly joke or a comic strip, okay? So, what do you think it's going to look like? And here's what I'm going to tell you. At least two shapes, you can cross that out. You can have shapes in there, but I'm really after you incorporating sprites and two lines of text and then some kind of background, okay? You can choose to have a plain color background. You can use a sprite for your background, okay? There's a lot of things that you can look for. Now, while you're here on this part, I'm going to pause for a moment and have you look at some of the examples that students have shared in the past, okay? So let me get right here. All right, here are some sample ones, okay? There's a whole bunch of sprites in here. I see two lines of text with some properties. That's good. This one, and by the way, the text isn't even a riddle on this one, just says, I want the diamond, where are you going? Okay, next one. And let me make this a little bit bigger for you so you can see it. Pink alien and green alien here, or blue. It says, why did the banana go to the doctor? I don't know why. Because it wasn't peeling well. Oh, there you go. All right, here's one. Goodness sakes, and it looks like I've scribbled all around it. But this one says, where does a snowman keep his money? In a snowbank. There you go. All right, let's keep scrolling here. Oh, here's a good one. How does the ocean say hi? It waves. Oh, clever. How do you throw, it's a little typo there. How do you throw an alien party? You plan it. Oh, that's a good pun. Oh, I love this one. If you know anything about Switzerland, their flag is square instead of rectangular, like most countries have. And it looks just like this. It's a red background with a white plus sign or cross in the center. What is the best thing about Switzerland? I don't know, but the flag's a huge plus. Got it. Oh, this one was quite elaborate in the sense they kind of made it a split screen. So they duplicated a lot of things like this sprite that serves as the grass, the zombie, this nasty skeleton, and so on. Why didn't the skeleton cross the road? I don't know. How come? He didn't have the guts to do it. Oh, that's good. So each of these is fulfilling some kind of criteria that we are working to have you guys fulfill. Let me get back to the right screen here. Here we are. Okay? So, as you're thinking about it and you're going to start to draw it out, kind of looking at the grid, and it's measured out here so that there's 8 boxes, 50 pixels each, so you got 400 pixels both horizontally and vertically. Okay? Will you flip it over to the back side for a moment? Because here's where you're going to see the criteria. Okay? Background. So the first thing that I want you to be aware of is your background has to either be a plain color, like background color, or a sprite of some sort. And code.org has quite a few options in there for backgrounds. Okay. Second thing is sprites. And here you have to have at least 2 in addition to the background. So if you use a sprite for the background, you got to have 2 more minimum on there. Properties. So we were working with these and we got all kinds of cool ones. So you need to apply 2 or more properties on more than one sprite. So you should have perhaps at least 1 property on each sprite or something like that. Here's the list of all the properties we've worked with. Scale, rotation, X and Y, which I said right now are kind of worthless. Tint, height and width, and then alpha. Alpha is the one that makes it transparent or fades. For text, you need at least 2 separate lines, or we call them strings of text. And then finally, the last one here, text properties. You need at least 2 properties. If you pick a size and color on those, then you've got it made. All right, just so that we can see it on the screen. That gives you, we're looking for a total of 6 elements. Now, if you have a background, that's 1, whether it's plain color or a sprite. 2 more sprites, that gives us 3. All right, 2 lines of text, that gets you 5. Then I want you to choose 1 more element to get you to 6. All right, that could be another sprite, another line of text, maybe a shape. Maybe you just want a plain ellipse or a rectangle or a line or something in there. Any of those things would get you to 6 pieces for it. Okay, so you are going to do the following today. And let me get 1 extra one in here. Okay, so if you go and look in Schoology today, you have a quick quiz that you are going to get started on. Okay, this one has 10 questions. You may certainly use code.org to use that as a guide and kind of make sure as you're working through those questions. Again, I call these practice quizzes, all right, but that means you only get 1 shot at it, okay? So make sure you're looking at code and thinking about the question before you just submit an answer. Then, second, you're going to start planning out on your activity guide what it is that you are thinking about. I would say also open up the worksheet or the document that has the corny jokes in Schoology. If you need some inspiration, you can look at that and see. Usually if you get the joke first, then you can start planning what you want it to look like afterwards, okay? And then if you get that far, you might be able to start programming it on lesson 11, okay? But your activity guide is going to count 10 points toward your grade, so make sure that you get that filled out, all right, before you start diving into programming, okay? You may want to take some time and go into code.org and say, okay, let's say, as I'm looking at this, I kind of need to know what kind of sprites are in the sprite library that are available to me to use. So as I get in here and pick lesson 11, and by the way, I think they've got some pre-ideas or some examples that you can look at here on this one. Oh, we're going back to our aliens, okay? All right, so when you go to level number 2, it's going to say, all right, let's just pick a background, okay? But have your corny joke figured out. So when you go in here into the animation tab, go and see if you want to choose any of these backgrounds. For example, that's a sprite. You can, of course, always go back into drawing and just pick a plain background color, just not white, okay? If you have just green, It's going to look like that, just plain green. Certainly okay to do that. I just want you to go step by step. Once you've got your background, okay, ignore this part that says make sure you use at least 2 shapes. We're not doing shapes. You're all using sprites. Okay, cool. Then as you continue moving on, if you get this far, then you can start going on a sprite hunt. But like I said, you probably just want to sit when you are looking at backgrounds and then see, all right, what kind of stuff do they have for food? They've got a lot of choices here. As you're searching and things, if you don't find what you're looking for, you can make a note and say, all right, remember when we were looking for the kite? I need a kite. I'm going to have to go out and Google it because they don't have one in the Sprite library. Okay, so your job today, all right, first do that quick quiz, all right, practice quiz, then start working on the activity guide. Open up that file with all the corny jokes. Once you think you have your text chosen, then kind of start planning it out, what you want it to look like, okay? Draw it first because you'll have an idea of, oh, I think I need a cowboy and I need some kind of rope like a lasso or whatever you need. Have that figured out and then you can dive into the Sprite library and see if something like that exists, okay? So, good luck. Here's your job for today. Go ahead and get started, and as always, happy coding.